So, what is up with Lance Twiggs? The prosecution didn't produce him as a witness in this Charlie Kirk hearing, and we're not going to see his unredacted witness statements. So, investigators interviewed him twice. There are crazy conspiracies theories circulating online about how much Lance Twig knew and could he have stopped Tyler Robinson from killing, assassination style, Charlie Kirk? Did he play a role that prosecutors aren't telling us about? Were the text messages between him and Tyler contrived? Because they sure sound like it to me. The question is haunting. Did Tyler Robinson act alone? I mean, is the prosecution actually debunking the conspiracy theories here? Well, here are my key legal takeaways. First, welcome to Lunchtime Law. If you're new here, I'm Margaret McLean, a former prosecutor, civil trial lawyer, and law professor. This is where we translate what is actually happening inside the courtroom and inside some of the investigations. So please press the like button and subscribe. And by the way, stay here till the end because I'll also be discussing the Larry Millete trial, closing argument from the defense. It's taking place in San Diego, California. And the question there is, will the defense create enough reasonable doubt? It's a circumstantial no body case, no crime scene, no weapon. How is the defense going to uh, how are they going to counter that hemlock poisoning brought up by the prosecution? What will the jury ultimately do? And they have lots of dots to connect. By the way, I'll be also be talking about the latest in the David case. That's David Burke again out in California. So there's some breaking news there. And also, if you missed it last night, I had a very enlightening interview with um, the legendary Susan Smith prosecutor Tommy Pope. We discussed the Lindsay Clancy case and compared it to the Susan Smith case. And if you will recall, Susan Smith, that case occurred, the trial, way back in 1995. And Larry Pope, Tommy Pope was a young prosecutor, only 32 years old, and it was a death penalty case. It was horrible circumstances where Susan Smith strapped her two young children in the car seats and let the car go down the ramp. And you can imagine what happened after that. But he didn't secure the death penalty, but he did secure a murder conviction. And he's a great attorney. So it's really interesting to hear his insights on that Lindsay Clancy case because there was, the defense attorney back in the Susan Smith case tried to say that Susan Smith had suicidal ideation, so they were trying to mitigate her responsibility. But here in the Lindsay Clancy case, which is coming up in 2 weeks in Massachusetts, they're going to be focusing heavily on postpartum depression and overmedication. So check that out. I thought it was a very interesting interview. And gosh, that Clancy case, there are just so many gray areas there, and I will be following that. So, here, now, we're still entrenched in the Tyler Robinson hearing. He's facing aggravated M charges in the fatal assassination style shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk last September. And as you recall, Kirk would go around to college campuses and debate students on all sorts of controversial topics. So, this that is exactly where the prosecution is going as far as motive. So they revealed what that motive is, that Robinson targeted Charlie Kirk because of Kirk's orthodox Christian views on gender ideology and sexuality, stating that the suspect, Robinson, was vehemently on the other side of those views, especially when it came to views about transgender and gay people, because Robinson's lover, Lance Twiggs, was in the process of transitioning from male to female. So I have a slideshow, of course, and let me show you what he looks like if you haven't seen already. So let's see, we have, um, so that's, of course, Tyler Robinson and Charlie Kirk. the victim in this case, and there he is giving one of his talks, and that's the surveillance from yesterday, which we'll go back. Oh, there we go. So this right here is Lance Twiggs, and of course that's Tyler Robinson. So basically, in this, Robinson believed Kirk was spreading hate, especially when like I said, this is his lover who he lived with, his roommate, and prosecutors here are seeking the death penalty. So it helps them if they can ultimately prove a targeted ideological motive. And again, remember, this is just a preliminary hearing. It's not in front of a jury. And the prosecution only has to prove probable cause, which is very easy to do, in my opinion. They have plenty of evidence for that. Now, here is what mainstream media is glossing over, in my opinion. The State Bureau of Investigation agents confirmed that Lance Twiggs was interviewed twice by police during this investigation. But instead of putting Twiggs on the stand in person, prosecutors dropped a bombshell. They revealed that Twiggs was granted use immunity in exchange for a pre-recorded video statement. So let me translate that. What is use immunity as opposed to full immunity? What it means is that nothing Twiggs said in those recorded statements can be used to criminally prosecute him. So therefore, he doesn't have full immunity. For example, let's say that there's a video of him doing something like driving a getaway car, and there's no video of that, but I'm just giving you an example. Well, that could be used against Lance Twiggs, but not any of these statements. So that's use. They can't use his statements. So that's the best way I can translate that. Of course, Tyler Robinson's defense team wanted to get their hands on this crucial witness. They launched a massive legal effort to legally compel Twiggs to come into court and face live cross-examination during this hearing. But the judge flatly denied it, ruling that Twiggs does not have to appear in person here. Instead, the prosecution fought all day yesterday to play the heavily redacted clips of those secret tapes in court. And the defense, of course, fought back, arguing that these confessions to the statements would ruin any chance of a fair trial. I would agree with that. I mean, I disagree with that, because I think that ultimately at trial, this witness will be called, and they're arguing about a fair trial because they don't believe that there's going to be a jury pool that can be selected out there who don't know something about this case, because the case is on television and it's online. They're talking about it on the media. But in my opinion, they always seem to find those jurors. People are wrapped up in many other things. So many people I know don't even know that this is going on. They don't know much about the case. They're wrapped up in the World Cup right now. They're wrapped up in their kids and school vacation or the political scene, what's going on overseas. So believe it or not, they're not the only ones. We are not the only ones obsessed with true crime. But the most, going back to what happened in court, I would say the most emotional moment in the courtroom came from Charlie Kirk's widow, Erika, who was seen wiping away tears in the front row. This is very emotional for her. I know that the family doesn't want to be present during some of the graphic videos where it shows the actual moment when Charlie died. So that's very difficult. Or when he was shot, right? But another thing too is there are so many attorneys in this proceeding. So you've got attorneys for the defense, you've got an attorney, there's prosecution team, there's also attorneys for the family. And we had Jeff Nyman, who stood up and delivered an impassioned impassioned rebuke to the judge's secrecy orders. He demanded total transparency, telling the court, and I'll quote from him, to not let the world see what happened here will create doubt and distrust in the judicial system. So he really wanted the court to play the unredacted tapes for all the world to see. Again, why is this being redacted now? And it goes back to um, my, thumbnail, right? Like, what are they trying to hide? Is this scandalous? Why not be transparent? And I guess there's two ways you could look at that, right? You could look at it, well, this is just a preliminary hearing. We don't have to go through all of this evidence, but because it's only probable cause, so we're not in front of a jury where it has to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't know. So that's just my thoughts on that. Also, we had some very interesting video surveillance where Charlie, Tyler Robinson talked to his family and to his pastor and ultimately turned himself in. That his dad had recognized him on the video and said, "Oh my God, that's my son." And so that part was played, and of course, they wanted to show. I think the prosecutors wanted to show the judge that he was dressed in pretty much the same clothes. So what we've seen so far, I think, is very interesting. The prosecution has shown planning and premeditation. And of course, there was that chilling video capturing a figure who investigators say is Robinson scurrying across the gravel-covered roof of the campus building, then trying to lie down in that sniper position moments before the shooting. The great evidence, and then of course all those videos, and then they found the gun, the rifle that he used in the woods with all of that DNA evidence. And the DNA evidence that came out, it was on a towel that was found wrapped around that rifle found in the woods. His DNA was also on a screwdriver left on the roof near the sniper pad in the area where he fired. They also found, as I mentioned yesterday, 3 different DNA profiles on the screwdriver and the towel. One is Robinson's, the other is we don't know, but clearly the other one belonged to, of course, here we go again, Lance Twiggs, his romantic lover. And there was quite a bit of DNA found on that towel. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out there. Maybe it's as simple as Lance Twiggs showered in that towel, threw it on the ground, and Robinson grabbed the towel to cover up the rifle. Who knows? So it could be there innocently as well. Who is that third person? I don't know, but that's good fodder for the defense. So what else do we have here? Remember, again, I'm going to remind you guys, the burden of proof is extraordinarily low here. The state only has to show probable cause, meaning there's reasonable grounds that exist that Robinson committed this crime. And in my opinion, it's so low. I guarantee we'll see this at some point. We'll see a trial unless the death penalty is taken off the table like Kohlberger and we get a plea deal. But this has been going on all week, and it is dragging out, in my opinion. But we shall see what happens after that. And I have a few more slides here of Lance Twiggs. So here we have Lance Twiggs again, dressed in, I don't know, something crazy. And some of the other slides is there's Tyler Robinson running across the roof. We had the surveillance video yesterday. Tyler Robinson in the garage, dressed in that same outfit that he used when he turned himself in. Of course, that's the campus. So those are my slideshows on that. But next, I want to turn to the Larry Millete trial. And this is Maya Millete, who was missing for a number of months. And it's a very sad case, again, out of California. It's a highly circumstantial case, and it's wrapping up in San Diego. I think it went on for 6 weeks. But Larry's wife, Maya, disappeared in January of 2021. She was only 39 years old, a mother of 3, and she just vanished from her Chula Vista, California home. She was last seen on January 7th, and the state argues that she was killed the following day, the day after she vanished, because she contacted a divorce lawyer. She wanted to leave him. The marriage hadn't been going well. Her body has never been found. And I think it's interesting that her husband, Larry, wasn't arrested or charged with the murder until October of 2021. That's quite a bit of time after. And I wonder if that's going to play into the jury's minds at all. So let's see what we have next here. Oh, gosh. This is Maya with her family. She had beautiful children. This is here is Maya when she was younger and in much happier times. So just a little bit of a history. She was very smart. She was born in the Philippines, moved to Hawaii when she was 13 years old, and she graduated from the University of Hawaii and last worked as a contract specialist for the Naval Information Warfare Center. She met her husband, Larry, in high school. So they were high school sweethearts. After, this is interesting. He moved to Hawaii with his family. They moved from San Diego following a juvenile gang-related assault arrest in 1997. So what happened when he was a juvenile? I don't know, but too bad that wasn't a red flag for her at this point. But young love, so they married, they moved to San Diego, had 3 children, and the prosecution produced evidence that in late 2020, during COVID, their relationship deteriorated, and Larry became more controlling and paranoid, suspecting that Maya may have had an affair. But still, the prosecution has had an uphill battle here. Again, there they are in times. I say it's an uphill battle because a body, a weapon, there's no crime scene. It's very circumstantial. They do point to Larry's extreme obsession with keeping Maya from leaving him, including paying thousands of dollars to online spellcasters. That's right. You heard me correctly. It's like witchcraft, and that's just my little slide on that one. But he wanted to bind her to the marriage, or at one point make her incapacitated so she just wouldn't leave him. Prosecutors also point to a 12-hour gap where Larry turned off his phone and vanished in the family vehicle the morning after Maya went missing. That's kind of interesting. Was he getting rid of a body? Now, Deputy District Attorney Christy Bowles delivered a very emotional closing argument first, and we talked about that yesterday on Lunchtime Law. She walked the jury through the reality that Maya was a mother who loved her children and was actively planning to leave her husband. She would just never, never leave those beautiful children. So she also pointed to oops, that's the next one. Let's go back to Maya and her beautiful children. So, of course, during her closing argument, she used a lot of photographs to show what a loving mother, loving, caring mother Maya was, who would just never leave her children. She also pointed to a surveillance video from the morning after Maya disappeared. The video shows Larry backing his SUV almost entirely inside the garage for several minutes. But then there was part of it in audio, which was chilling. The prosecutor told the jury that you can actually hear the distinct sound of something heavy being dragged. I wonder what the jury will do with that. I mean, there's no video of that. Something being dragged, that'll be interesting. So they also used evidence or talked about how Larry researched the deadly neurotoxin, which is derived from the poison hemlock plant, which was actually found in a vial inside his home. Does that show state of mind and the propensity to commit this crime? So the prosecutor argued that hundreds of individual pieces of evidence combined to tell one story, that Larry Millete is guilty. Next, yesterday, we had defense attorney Leanne Sabatini deliver her closing argument. She told jurors that her client Larry was a victim as well. She provided jurors with a different theory and different narrative that cast Larry as a troubled, tormented man whose wife was having an affair and who had been unfairly cast as a villain in a trial that relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence. She expressed sympathy for the victim, and here's her sympathy. I have some quotes here. So one of the quotes that she used to express that sympathy was, quote, "I do want to take a moment to honor Maya Malate. She is loved by a ton of people in this courtroom and outside of this court. We acknowledge her humanity. What I hope is not forgotten is that he, meaning her client, is human too." Um, After that, Sabatini implored jurors to consider that Larry Millete, his allegedly obsessive behavior and paranoia was the result of his wife's infidelity and his desire to actually save their marriage. So she said, and another quote here is, "So much of that is being spun and used to create guilt of Larry. And maybe some people won't like it when I say this, but he was also being abused. He was being psychologically and emotionally abused." I wonder if the jury's going to like that. I don't know. I wonder if how much proof there was that he was actually psychologically abused by Maya. It was a long trial, so evidence must have come out if she's talking about it in her closing argument. So Sabatini also focused on the lack of concrete evidence connecting Larry to the disappearance of his wife. According to Sabatini, Larry did not have the criminal sophistication to successfully kill his wife and hide her body. And for that, she stated, um, let's see, where's the quote here? "How does that messy, emotional person also do something so clinically? It defies logic. If you haven't realized by now, a trial is a search for the truth. We're not here to convict Larry. We're here to figure out the truth." Um, okay. So she continued by stressing that uh, by their own admission, the prosecution does not know what happened to Maya Millete. Their arguments amounted to, I love this quote, "throwing spaghetti at a wall." That's a good one. I have to remember that one. Throwing spaghetti at a wall. And it's interesting because I actually did have spaghetti for dinner last night. Just saying. I'll probably have that for lunch. The prosecutor so here's another quote. And I like reading quotes because, again, there's no cameras in the courtroom. So she says, the prosecutor got up here and they said they have no idea what happened. They've thrown it to you to figure it out, but that's not how it works. They have to prove it. You have to be sure. And I do agree with that. They have to be sure. Sabatini also contextualized the couple's 20-year marriage including their early marriage, their Filipino upbringing, Larry Milete's time in the Navy, their 3 children, and the close family relationships that the two of them had. And additionally, the failure of their marriage also coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic. So she wanted to remind jurors of that pandemic and how hard it was for people back then. That she argued that that pandemic led to a psychological tailspin for Larry Milete. This is a man who needed help, she said. And she also mentioned that, listen, he consulted the internet for everything. One of his quotes was, "How do I get my wife to fall back in love with me? How do I die without feeling any pain?" While the prosecution focused in on his internet searches for poison hemlock and the spellcasters, this is the way the defense spun it, that it's a possible that the defense argued that this was a suicidal ideation on behalf of their client. And she said, to stand up here and say a man who is at his lowest thinking about taking his own life is somehow homicidal. Like, he was suicidal, she's arguing, not homicidal. And she said, that's just outrageous. That Larry could get any results from these spell castings seems like another leap of faith that you have to take. And she's saying that this was more like Larry's diary. And it was technically, she reminds jurors that, listen, he looked for spellcasters, but that's also protected speech, which did not make him responsible for killing his wife. She also argued that, and I said this yesterday, and we'll see if the jury buys it, there's simply not enough evidence to convict Larry Milete of his wife's murder. The prosecution says you don't get to award a murder for successfully hiding a body. Well, guess what? And I like this quote, you don't get a conviction either. She makes a point there. Let's see what I have on my chat. Yes, I agree. Wild stories with Dave. Whoops, put you back on there. This is a big case. I remember telling you about it when it happened. Yes, that's right. Yes, it is a big case. You did tell me about this, Dave, and thank you for being such a great follower of mine. I appreciate you in the chat. And you have to also follow Dave's channel. It's very interesting. He has wildlife stories with Dave, where he shows all these interesting animal videos where it's either attacks, but you really get into nature, and I enjoy seeing all of his videos. So subscribe to his channel. He's got a much bigger channel than me, by the way. So, but most people do. And of course, I'm building here. So moving on, ultimately, it'll be very interesting to see what the jury does. And they did have a rebuttal here. So on rebuttal, the prosecution disputed Sabatini's claims about the lack of evidence. She argued that the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming and when taken in totality, points exactly to Larry Milete as the culprit. Now, Superior Court Judge Enrique Camarana instructed jurors on Tuesday that they can find him guilty of one of 4 charges. And I think that's why it's going to take the jury quite a time during deliberations. Again, it was a long trial, but they can find him guilty of first-degree M, second-degree M, voluntary manslaughter, or involuntary manslaughter. So they also do not need to agree on exactly how Maya died, but they must be unanimous on whether Maya is dead and if Larry is responsible. So that makes sense. Here's the specific charges that the jury will be considering today, maybe tomorrow, maybe the rest of the week, we'll see. So we've got first degree M, and what they have to prove is an intentional, planned, and premeditated killing. So all of those elements must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Then we have second degree M, which is an intentional killing committed in the heat of the moment. Do we have evidence for that? I'm not really sure if we do because there's no heat of the moment evidence other than the dragging of that body. But to me, that's not heat of the moment. And we also have voluntary manslaughter, which means the intentional killing committed under provocation or in the heat of passion. We also have involuntary manslaughter, unintentional killing resulting from reckless or criminal negligence. Now, the jury may also deliver a not guilty verdict if the prosecution fails to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. I am very interested to see what the jurors come up with, and I hope that jurors will be interviewed after they render a verdict because I'd like to see what they thought about that case. And let's see, we have, yes, I agree, Dave. There are a lot of conspiracy theories out there about the Charlie Kirk case, but I think the Tyler guy clearly did it. I have to say, I do agree he clearly did it. The evidence looks like that to me. The conspiracy theories, I believe, out there, people are wondering, did he act alone? It seemed, I mean, and the fact that it only took one shot, I mean, from quite a distance. I mean, he was a good shot that he could have a kill shot from that distance, only one bullet. And of course, there was one spent casing found with the rifle. But I think a lot of the conspiracy theories also circle around Lance Twiggs and, why isn't there transparency? Why haven't we heard from Lance Twiggs? And who else could be involved? Of course, when we have a case as big as this and someone who was as controversial as the victim, Charlie Kirk, you're going to have a lot of conspiracies floating around. But I do think that, yes, there will be probable cause to bind this over to trial. And I do believe that there's enough evidence here to find Tyler Robinson guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And whether he gets the death penalty or not, we'll see about that. There's a lot of people that are calling for the death penalty in this case. So I also want to turn to, and I know Wildlife Stories with Dave, I know you're very interested in the David case. I've done a lot on that. So I do want to talk about that, and I have some slides here on the David case. So let's see what I got. Whoops, got to put it back up. Turning to David, there he is. And for the people that don't know much about this case, there's been a major update, which is, shaking everybody. Every time there's David news, it's always shakes the internet, right? But let me just give you a breakdown here. So we've got 21-year-old David, who's a singer, songwriter. He is also known as D4VD, or, David Anthony Burke is his full name. And he appeared inside a downtown Los Angeles courtroom following months of legal delays. He was in court for a status hearing. He sat silently and very seriously as the judge officially set a multi-day preliminary hearing, finally, to begin on July 21st. So I will be there are no cameras in the courtroom. That's right. So I'll still be following it. But again, transparency, I wish there were cameras in the courtroom for that. So this hearing is expected to last about 5 days, I think they said. And the state will, show very graphic evidence, especially forensic evidence, to determine whether this can proceed to a full trial. So it's very similar to Charlie Kirk's case. So Burke is facing the death penalty, as I mentioned, or life without parole under special circumstances. The allegations include M of a witness and lying in wait. Prosecutors allege that Burke engaged in a year-long illegal sexual relationship with Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And that's her right there. Beautiful young woman. And according to unsealed court filings, when Celeste threatened to expose the abuse and ruin his uh, rising mainstream, he was a big deal. He had a world tour and all that. But when she threatened to out him about this illicit relationship, that would be the motive to get rid of her. So, it took a very long time for authorities to arrest him, which was very interesting. So, the state's paper trail against Burke is incredibly chilling. I've done quite a number of videos on that. Prosecutors claim that immediately after the killing, Burke used an alias to order a shovel via Postmates, followed by 2 chainsaws, heavy duty laundry bags, and an inflatable pool, because investigators believe that her body was kept in his home for at least 12 days before being dismembered and stuffed into those bags. So her badly decomposed remains were ultimately discovered months later on September 8th of 2025 inside the front trunk of his abandoned Tesla in a tow yard. So this is quite a case. But what adding to this courtroom drama is unbelievable. It's a new twist, right? So Los Angeles County Human Resources has launched a formal probe into its own medical examiner's department. Investigators are forcing the county coroner workers into a series of recorded interviews following allegations that staff leaked highly sensitive autopsy and crime scene details to media outlets while the files were under an active police lockdown. So many leaks to the press this day, and were they paid? Unbelievable. So I also did something on that in more detail last night, if you want to check it out. And there's the press conference. That's the initial press conference regarding David, but just unbelievable. So what's up next? Well, next we are I'm going to be following the Kirk case. I'll be following all the developments as far as Lance Twigg is concerned and what will be coming up at this preliminary hearing. But in the meantime, please press the subscribe button and press your notifications, because I will be here tomorrow at noon. And boy, these weeks fly by fast. I can't believe it's Thursday already. I do not run the lunchtime during the weekend, but I will be putting out other videos. So please subscribe and press your notifications. And let's see, let me look. Let me look at what else. Wild Stories with Dave said, very crazy. So this is interesting. I love talking to the chat. Dave says there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there about the Charlie Kirk. Okay, I saw that. They say it was Israel. That's interesting, Dave. And of course, Dave here says, which I think is ridiculous. I agree. I think that's ridiculous. And here we go. Yes, me too. This case against TR seems pretty definitive. And Tyler Robinson. Yeah, I agree. But again, I do feel sorry for what people. I just want to say that whether you agree or disagree with Charlie Kirk's philosophy, he was still the father of young children. He was somebody's husband, and he was killed for his free speech. So I feel for the victims. I always feel for the M victims. And again, thank you for, especially Dave. I really appreciate all of your, oh, I thought you were Dave. It's a different person. Here's my glasses. So see Marcus. Yes, me too. The case against TR seems pretty definitive. Yes, thanks for your comment. Sadly, I need these glasses, but yeah. And then there are some other cases coming up, like that Clancy case is really disturbing. If you really want a case that will make you think, check out that interview that I had last night with Tommy Pope, because I think I have different feelings on the case than Tommy Pope, and many people do. Like I'll be honest, I think I'd have a hard time, even though I'm a mother of three. I think I'd have a hard time convicting Lindsay Clancy because of her psychosis and postpartum depression and medications. So I also played a clip from Kevin Reddington last night where he was listing off all the different medications she was on, and it blew my mind. So can someone with go into psychosis and snap like that? I think it's possible. Ultimately, it will come down to two competing experts on psychosis. But it's just such a tragic case, and check that out. That is up if you go to the Margaret McLean show. You will see that up. It's one of the last lives that I did. Of course, I've got to thank you. Thanks, Lou. I appreciate it. Thanks, Lou Morocco. Thank you for the lunchtime law. And by the way, yes, press. I appreciate you guys being here because it is true that numbers drop off in July and August for YouTubers. So I might not have a huge audience here. Obviously, the big people like Lawyer, they're going to have their numbers. But for a lot of us, it's quite a bit of a drop. But I'm going to still move. I'm going to march on, and I'm going to deliver my legal news every day at noon, and also later on if I feel like it. Yesterday, I put out 4 videos. I can't believe I did that. What was wrong with me? But I appreciate you guys being here, and I appreciate you following the channel. And everybody, really have a great lunch. I am starving right now. I think I'll have a ham sandwich. See you tomorrow at noon.